Welcome to the Life of Hair. My name is James Atkinson. Thank you for tuning into this week's episode. Now, a few weeks ago, I did a haircut about cutting invisible layers onto longer hair, where I used a channel cutting technique to take weight out and create movement throughout the hair. And in that episode, I was talking about further maintenance of invisible layers and how we might go about cutting invisible layers or re-trimming invisible layers after you've put them in. So this episode's got a bit of a dual purpose. This is kind of how do you trim split ends in hair that have got lots of different lengths within a one length haircut. But equally, this is how I would go about trimming the shorter pieces in a invisible haircut. Now, if you haven't seen the invisible layer video, then I highly recommend that you either go and watch that first, then come back and watch this video, and then this video might make a bit more sense, or watch this video and then go back to that video, and then you'll see why this might be useful to you. But it is kind of in two veins, if you will. And I think some people, especially at the moment with balayage techniques, lots of people have steered towards one length haircuts. But now people are wanting a bit more movement, a bit more texture, but they don't want traditional layers. And the invisible hair layering systems, if you will, or ways to invisibly layer hair are going to become even more popular. I mean, let's think about it. Alexa Chung, a kind of British TV celebrity, she's had invisible layers cut into her hair for ages. If you enjoy this video, then hit the old thumbs up button to support my growth and help the algorithm tell people that this is a video that people enjoy. And text me down in the comments section. Let me know what you think about this invisible layer idea, and is this useful to you? I love to hear from you. And if you'd like to get some deeper insights into the life of hair education, then do join me on my Patreon, linked down in the description. Until next week, look after yourselves, be safe, be sane, see you soon. So what you need to do is prepare the hair first, make sure it's smooth, straight and dry, but don't iron it, because if you iron it, you will take away all of these little hairs that flick out. So you want these little hairs to flick out, so you don't want to be too kind of fastidious about blow drying it smooth. Take the hair between your middle finger and your index finger and bend the hair towards you. Really super simple way of getting the hair to kink, and then therefore allowing you to let those hairs ping out, and then simply just use a scissor over comb motion to work down the hair. Now, this is the safest way of doing this technique. I'm going to show you other ways that you can take this technique on. And when you're working on finer hair textures, like we see on my lady here, there's quite a lot of hairs, but it's a fine textured hair in its own individual right. We need to be a little bit mindful and obviously not to take away too much hair. That's probably why I wouldn't do invisible layers on this hair in the first place, is because one, it's finer, and two, it's prone to breakage. And we only actually colour this hair with tint, using a spatula highlight technique. If you want to know about those, I've got loads and loads of videos on my channel about spatula highlights. So we just use a tint to lift this, because I'm fearful of ever using bleach on it. She's very, very light naturally, around a level 8 with a slightly kind of warm hue in it, but we tone those warm tones out of her hair with a 8A. You know, you won't remove all the flicks within the hair, but if you can hit 50-60% of them, you will have trimmed 50-60% of the ends, and those ends do tend to be quite dry and, you know, tend to be a little bit split as well in the instance of hair textures that are on the weaker side. So you've kind of removed quite a lot of those split ends. But if you layered this hair and you tried to get to these split ends, you just would never find them. They live within the hair, and this is the difference between doing this and cutting in layers and kind of going back and trimming invisible layers, is that obviously once you've put invisible layers in, they're not concurrent through the hair. They don't start at one point and finish at another in that concurrent fashion. But I mean, I'm not a huge fan of like a traditional square layer, specifically. I mean, it has its place, but I'm not a huge fan. It's not my favorite looking haircut. I do prefer the look of invisible layers on quite a lot of hair types, especially if they dry their hair naturally and they're looking to enhance the wave in their hair. So I do a lot of invisible layers, and I do a lot of this particular type of technique to help people kind of reduce down their split ends. It is a little scary, this technique, I understand, but once you get your head into it and you start to understand it, it's really great. Now, you will have seen me do like a freehand technique with this particular way of scissor over combing the hair, and that is a particularly scary way of doing this particular technique, unless you're very confident with your scissor over comb action and making sure that the top of your hand is very stable and you're only moving your thumb. That is really, really important to remember in this specific technique and scissor over comb in general, because if you don't do that and you're very chompy, you'll grab bits of hair that you didn't mean to scissor over comb and you could cut a chunk out. So if you want to do this technique and start practicing it, I don't suggest you work up the hair in the way that you've just seen me doing. So the way that you see me do it right now is the best way to start. So freehand is the ultimate kind of extension of this technique, and taking it into probably the most difficult of all of the ways that you could do this particular technique. The working up the hair, trapping it and working up the hair as you move, again, that's very treacherous. And then the super simple way is grab the hair between your index finger and your middle finger, bend the hair around so the hairs flick out as you move down the hair, lots of tension on the hair, and scissor over comb just above your fingers, and you will remove tons and tons of those little split ends and hairs that are poking out, and the hair will start to look smoother and flatter as you work through the technique. Now, in Maddie's particular case here, I just took my time. I went through all the sections. It's not going to make the hair sit completely succinct to the head. In some instances, it will. You'll see like a big change in, how many flicks are kicking out. But when I dried Maddie's hair here, I wanted to kind of accentuate the flick, so I didn't make a big deal of blow drying it. I wanted you guys to be able to sort of see it on camera, so I just blow dried it with a paddle brush, and then I very, very quickly put a round brush over it so that it really wasn't very smooth. But obviously, once we style the hair properly, here you see the finished result, you're going to get a beautiful result. You're not going to see all those flicks and kicks in the hair, but you want them there for the purpose of removing them. So I hope this kind of gives you an insight into how you might be able to trim split ends in just a general haircut that's got split ends and it's not particularly layered, and you don't want to put layers into it because of the density of the hair. Or alternatively, you want to tidy up and trim a haircut that has got invisible layers in it, but you don't necessarily want to put any more invisible layers in it because it's only going to make it too thin. And if you're in that particular instance where you're doing invisible layers but it's quite heavy at the roots and it's got thinner towards the ends, you can take a little bit out from the roots, but you obviously need to be careful that you don't then take any weight away from those ends. So it's a bit of a balancing act, it's a bit of a juggling act to get, when you're doing invisible layering techniques, you do need to be a little bit mindful each time. You need to really assess what's there and what's not there. But if you are needing to trim your lady's hair and you can't go back in and do invisible layers, but you do need to do the split ends, this is a fantastic way of doing it. So I hope you found this insightful, useful, interesting, and if you did, hit that thumbs up button, subscribe if you haven't already. It is wonderful to see those subscribers really racking up recently. Thousands of you guys have subscribed in the last few weeks, so it's wonderful to have you guys with us on this journey and join the Life of Hair community, and I look forward to seeing you again in the next episode, and I hope you have a wonderful week in the interim. See you soon.